All right. I do believe any moment now we will hear from Stacey Kent from somewhere in the U.S. I am ready to toast her. Uh-huh.
Hello.
Hello.
Promising.
Are you seeing us?
Not yet. I think there's a little camera button to your lower left.
We're doing this on the iPhone. Oh yeah, here we go. Start video. Okay.
All right. Hey.
Bingo.
Hi.
Jim. Hey. I want to toast you guys right now. Cheers.
Thank you.
It's 2 o'clock where I am. I know it's a little bit earlier where you are.
Yeah.
Cheers.
The sun is not yet past the yard arm.
Oh, okay. So that first toast was for Stacey, but I made two. I poured 2 drinks, so I can toast Jim as well.
Oh,
Cheers.
Jimmy, can I shoot?
Yeah.
Cheers, Jimmy. Cheers, James. Can I borrow that gray stool for this?
Yes, you can.
Where are you in the world?
So we live in sort of the middle of nowhere, Carbondale. Do you know where we're in the Rockies, in above a town called Carbondale. We're not really in the town. You can
Is this
Really?
Colorado?
We're in Colorado, and there are towns near us, but we live kind of in agricultural land in the middle of nowhere. So we've got a lot of wild animals. We've got deer and bears and mountain lions. And yesterday I saw the first white weasel of the season. When the winter comes, they turn bright white, pure white with a little black speck on the tail. So you know winter's coming. We had a little snow, maybe you can see.
Yeah. Wow. I used to be called a white weasel, but then I left the music industry. No. That's amazing. So lockdown for you is nature and working on music with the man you love. You probably have it easier than 90% of the people, right?
I think that there's I'll show you. I'm in the studio.
Mm-hmm.
So we're set up here. I don't know what you can see.
Yeah, it looks
but
great.
We've got this studio, and there's my booth. And when we're off the tour, we're just here in all of this beautiful space around us, and we're cut off. So in a sense, it's not like when we're off tour. It's just that it's gone on a while. We usually go on tour and it's frantic, and then we come home to this and it's utter peace. We've been in lockdown for 9 months, but I'm here with like everybody else, but we have all of this. So you get out, you get on a walk, you get on a hike, and you don't feel. My poor dad, for example, who's on the 26th floor on the Upper West Side of New York, he's feeling a little stir crazy because he's.
Right.
How are you guys?
Well, here, see, in Canada, it's not been so bad as in the U.S. with the numbers, but we're in lockdown right now. I don't think we have as many. Well, I know we don't have as many crazies, but we still have some crazy. So there has to be. There's the safe thing, but there's a major, a lot of artists here are thinking about, why am I living in a big city? Maybe I could be doing what you're doing. I think a lot of people are thinking about just not living in the city, coming into work. It's not, people think it's not an easy thing to do, but when you're paying a third the rent or able to buy a place, maybe it's worth thinking about. So I think there's no max exodus, yes, but people are really thinking aloud about what is it to live in a city when everything's closed all the time.
Well, if you need anybody to come to us as the advocates to kind of help, wean them away from the city and to this, yeah. we're very happy to do it. The only downside, and it's not so terrible, is that you have a longer car ride to the airport. I mean, we're 4.5 hours from Denver, but we're set up for that. We know we have a long ride to get over to Canada, but you've got your podcast, you got your music, you got your bar of chocolate, you got your friend next to you, or not, your whatever you're listening to, and you take the ride and you get lots of beauty. And the upside is we are very relaxed out here on another level. I mean, watching the world is crazy, there's no doubt.
Yeah. This would even be quieter than where you were born, right?
This is so
South
quiet.
Orange, New Jersey has
South Orange, New Jersey.
20,000 people.
It feels like that is, that's major urban hub for me. We don't see anybody. I mean, our neighbors are.
You come from a small town that still has gas lights, but where you are now feels like quiet compared to that big bustling metropolis.
Exactly. We have well water, we have neighbors far away, we all kind of gather on the road and take little walks together, and I'm all for it. If you can just handle the drive.
Yep.
We're probably about 18 minutes from the supermarket. My sister's in New York City and she can get anything right then and there, and yet she can't get away.
Right.
So anyway, we're the advocates. Call us anytime.
Yeah. Hey, what made you decide that you wanted to go to England? We're going to go back a ways here. You decided to go to England. What were you, like a teenager, early 20s?
No, I just finished college.
Yeah.
So, so I guess I would have been 22.
Yeah. What was the thing that said, I got to go to London to study music?
Well, I went running, to be honest with you. So we'll get rid of the family stuff real quick, but just to say, I came from a pretty chaotic and not such an easy childhood, to be honest with you. It was, it's funny, just bringing it back to here where I am living in the peace. I am more of a peaceful person. I come from not that much peace. There was a lot of strain in the family as well. And I think that I knew instinctively that I needed to get away. Mm-hmm. So, and also I was a language student. I didn't go to England first. I went to Germany first. So I went from my growing up in New Jersey to college in New York. But literally, Jaymz, the day after I received my degree, I got a degree in Comp Lit, right? So it was a language and literature major. We graduated on something like a May 22. On May 23, I was on a plane to Europe. So one, I wanted to go see the world because I was a language student and I spoke all these languages and I just wanted to be in it, right? And use my new tools. And two, I was running away. So I went to Germany and I started working on my master's. And I was on more of an academic path. That's what I thought I would do. This is where your question really comes in, because I had been in Germany for just about a year. And I think that because I had done 4 years of undergrad college, every summer I had gone to Middlebury, where they have a language program, not far from you guys up in Vermont, where I was studying language. Then I started on my master's. And I think I just had a little bit of brain exhaustion from not having really taken any breaks.
Right.
And serendipity steps in, because I had a friend who was studying at Oxford, who was on a junior year abroad program at the college that I was studying at in New York. I went to visit her. I was in London. I was in Oxford. And I went, oh, I like this. I had this very romantic view. I'd grown up reading all this Thomas Hardy and all this literature from England. And I think that I was, a kid in a long skirt, thinking about these very romantic English thoughts. And so I was just going to stick around for a little while, hang out, take a break, let my brain take a break from academics. And I had a friend who introduced me to a friend who introduced me to Jim Tomlinson, mm-hmm. who was a young PPE student, that's philosophy, politics, and economics student at Oxford.
Wow, I did not know that. I didn't know that background. Cool.
Yeah. So Jim was on an academic path. I was on an academic path, but he played in the Oxford College Music Big Band, and I was dabbling in music on the side. Both of us had music as a hobby, and we met through friends, and we looked at each other, and it was just one of those. Boom. Oh, it's you. We didn't know each other, but it was, it's you.
I've known you guys, 10, 15 years, and you guys seem like that storybook couple. I mean, I once joked with Jim at Birdland, and we had an arm wrestle, and I said, whoever wins, gets to marry your wife. And he's like, I already won. And he just slammed my arm down anyway. But you guys are just a beautiful, beautiful couple. Did you make literally beautiful music together? Like your voice, when he first, because it was love at first sight. Then he heard you sing, right?
Yes.
Wow.
So things really fell into place. And I want to say that, yes, it has been very storybook. We've been married 28 years, and we are 29 years.
29
we just had
years.
our
Yeah,
anniversary.
30 next year. Unbelievable.
Yeah. So we are spirits who were meant to be, right? And I believe in a little bit of that, which I didn't believe in before, but I do, because I got to tell you some of the story, because we kept getting thrown onto the same path. Now, my childhood, referring to it again, was not an easy one. I was the kid, as I said, who was running away from something that was, there's a lot of turmoil, and it wasn't right for me. And I was sad. And I went to Europe. I looked at this man. I went, oh my God, it's you. Not literally, but he looked at me and said the same thing. Now, here's where the fun starts. So he hadn't heard me sing. I hadn't heard him play. We just locked and we knew.
Yeah.
Now, here's the other weird thing, Jaymz. There was a course going at the Guildhall School of Music. I had studied piano as a kid. I sang in the school shows. I was messing around in music, but I had no desire, so I thought, to be on a musical path. I mean, it was just this kind of back of the head wish. I sang along to the Beach Boys. I sang along to Carole King. I used to put on my headphones and press the button and go, rolling, and I was doing make-believe things as a kid, but I didn't know I was going to be a musician, and I didn't think I wanted to. But I met Jim. Then I saw this course being advertised at the Guildhall School of Music for just 1 year, a post-grad course. I thought, I'm going to audition for that. I don't know why. I'll never get in. It's for people who've already done 4 years of undergrad music. I'd done 4 years of undergrad literature. Why would they take me? I went to the audition, and I was accepted. I have only 2 people on this course of, I think, 25 people who hadn't done an undergrad degree in music. So that was already pretty weird that I had gotten accepted.
Including me.
Jim was also on the course.
Did you just sing? Like, I don't know, the word pitch perfect is thrown around a lot, but did you just sing and they heard and went, okay, whatever, we need her right now? Like, was it your voice? Because I would think it is. I just wonder how did someone not hear your voice before that time and say, you need to do this for your life?
Yes. I mean, I obviously, without being coy about it, there were things, I was very connected to music without really knowing anything about music. I studied piano, as I said, and so I had a classical background in piano, but I didn't really understand anything that I had been picking up on all those years, just learning by ear. So you do the audition and you sing, you play your instrument or sing, but you also have to go through a certain exam, some rigmarole of intervallic training and this sort of thing. Yeah. And I was very good at it. I had a good ear for music, even though I didn't have the vocabulary. And that's why they took me. So it wasn't just that I could sing, it was that I had sort of an innate understanding to the tools. And so I could get away with being on the course. Jim had studied sax his whole, clarinet, sax, played in the big band, as I said, but hadn't studied in that sort of official capacity as a music student. He was accepted as well. We met that first day in the hallway of the college because we were both in, this is a few months later after having met in Oxford. Yeah. He had brought a packed lunch because he can really cook, Jim. He brought this packed lunch and he let me have a little bite of this curry that he had made, and I was already in love with him, but this was it was like a magic potion. Yeah. And then we started to just hang around together in the college. We were looking for excuses to be together. When kids are on a music course, you get called a lot. The school gets called for kids to go and play at the Natural History Museum or the BT Tower, this sort of thing. So we were getting private engagement gigs where you just learn your trade. And so we would get these gigs and we would go off to them together. So we'd have our evenings together. But here's my favorite part of the story. London is vast, as you know. I mean, it's really a big city.
It's really vast.
It's really big.
In there, you have no idea how large it is in scope. Yeah.
Sure, because London used to be Little London, and then all those outer areas were suburbs. But then it encroached on that suburban area, and that became London too. So it's just huge. So here's what's really weird. London, as big as it is, the kids are coming from all different parts of London on bus routes to get to the Guildhall in East London. Jim and I rented rooms in houses in London, a couple of blocks from each other. So we were on the same bus route into the school. That was uncanny. That was not planned. And so I was so in love with this guy. I would literally, once I found out where he lived, just, by accident, I would go to the bus stop. If he wasn't there, I would just kind of miss the bus and wait till he showed up. Because I knew what his schedule was. We were on the same course.
Now, you guys had to discuss this. You knew you both had butterflies, but you didn't exactly, when you're young, you don't just walk up and go, hey, I'm pretty sure you're the one. This kind of took a little time, right?
Absolutely. I mean, I had no idea that this guy would be interested in me. And I was pretty insecure too. I wasn't feeling top of the world or anything. I was exhilarated, but it's not like I had a super amount of confidence. I think that my confidence was fueled by the fact that I was accepted onto this course without knowing anything. But that's also really intimidating because I was with a bunch of kids who knew exactly what they were doing. That was super intimidating. So I didn't have the most confidence in the world, but I just loved Jim and we just connected. So I'd wait at the bus stop. He would wait at the bus stop. And here's the best part. So we'd get on the bus route together to get to this other area in London. I don't know, maybe it took 20, 30 minutes, depending on traffic, to get back to that area in Hackney. And we'd go onto the upper side of the bus, the upper deck, right? And we loved songs, both of us. Jim loved Sinatra. He knew all these songs. He knew all the words to these songs. That was exciting to me because I'm meeting a sax player who knows every lyric to every song that I know. And I knew a lot of songs because I grew up listening to this stuff, right? Yeah. So he knows all this music. Then he invites me over to his apartment, his house, and we're sitting in his room. And if you looked at his bookshelf and his record shelf, much in common. He had this row of John Irving novels. I loved John Irving. There was just so much that was pure connection. He put on a Duke Ellington record with Paul Gonsalves, and I started singing along to the Paul Gonsalves solo. And he said, "Why do you know that? That's not something that's something sax players know. Why do you know that?" And I said, "I don't know, I just do." And it's because when I was a kid, one of the first vinyls that I bought was Ella and Duke at the Côte d'Azur. And I'm going to be honest with you, I bought it because I loved the cover. It was gray and grainy, and it just called to me, and I loved Ella. So that's how I discovered, that was my route into Duke. And I listened to this record over and over and over again, as you do when you're a kid and you're passionate about something.
So you just had the solo in your head.
And I just had the solo in my head, but I wasn't studying. And this is what I mean. I was practicing all along without realizing I was practicing. Yeah. So Jim knew all my songs, and I knew some of his solos. So we had this thing going on.
Is that when you started to play Café Bohème there for a couple years?
And then I got the gig at Café Bohème.
Wow! So there you are. You've got a new guy. You're playing music in a cafe, and then at some point Ronnie Scott's comes along, right? Which is my favorite jazz club in the whole world, by the way. Mine too.
Now that was trickier. This is kind of funny, and this is fun for people to hear too, because if anybody's listening in who's also, at the beginning kind of trying to make it, it's not all smooth sailing. We're very lucky now. We don't have to pick up the phone. The phone comes to us, right?
Right.
But at the beginning, you pound the pavement, so I was very lucky. I got this job at Café Bohème, playing Wednesdays and Fridays from 3 to 5 with a guitarist, sitting in the corner, just playing songs who were just drinking coffee. And we hardly got paid any money at all. And we got a cup of coffee. And it was great for us because we just learned a million tunes. What's really fun is that was such a long time ago, but some of those people will come to my gigs, in a big theater with thousands of people, and they'll go, I'll see them at the signing. "I saw you at Café Bohème," they'll say. I love that because there's just been this roots building all the way. Yeah. Now, Ronnie's was around the corner from Café Bohème. And when we'd get our break, sometimes I'd sit with my guitarist, or we'd talk to the fans and we'd drink our coffee. And sometimes I'd go around the corner to Ronnie's. And I'd see Pete King sitting in the foyer. In those days, they had that long foyer. Well, they still do. Yeah, with a different couch. Yeah. But he'd sit on the couch, and I'd come in. And he was so hard on me. He'd just look at me and say things like, "What do you want?" And, your heart is just in your stomach. It's really intimidating. Yeah. And I'd try and be upbeat. "Hey, Pete, what do you think? Can I have an opening set?" I wasn't terribly ambitious. I didn't go to a lot of people, but that was one of the, I made a demo and I sent it to 3 people, and all of those led to big things. I'll tell you about them in a minute.
Right.
But that was one of the places I went, and he just didn't want anything to do with me. He really intimidated me. One day, finally, he gave me an opening slot. And so I would do a week, and I was opening for big names. It was really amazing. And then he started to like me, you know, and he would give me, the week turned into 2 weeks, and I'd be the opening set. And Ronnie was alive in those days, and he would stand in the back of the room while we were sound checking, and he would listen. And he'd come up to me afterwards and he would say things like, you know, that word that you sang in It Might As Well Be Spring, that was wrong. It's supposed to be this word. You know, he knew everything for me. And so they were interested in me, but they were tough on me.
Yeah.
And then one day, and this is years later, and I'm jumping around in my
Sure.
my timeline, but years later, Pete came up to me one day when I was doing one of my opening sets, and he said, I want you to do the opening slot. And he looked at me with these really loving eyes. I'm really cutting to the chase here because I'm not giving you the long version. The long version was he was so hard on me,
Right.
you know, kind of mean.
Mm-hmm.
But he's an East Londoner, and that was just his demeanor. He was tough, boy. He was just tough. And it was hard, but you got to hang in there. And then one day he said, I've been really hard on you. And you've really made it, kid. And I'm really proud of you. So, you know, I'm telling you the story because I want people to know, you know, it can be really hard at the beginning and it can be really intimidating. And if you just do what you love to do without, I don't know, I'm not saying that my path is the only path, but my ambition was not to be this big famous star or anything. I just loved the music and I wanted to make the music.
Right.
And if you build it, they will come.
When did you start writing? I know that Jim, the Ice Hotel is a great example. Like you started to want to have people write for you or get more involved than doing standards, right?
Yes. Now, this is a really interesting thing. It was in about 2006. We met Kazuo Ishiguro, the novelist, in about 2000. And that's because he chose one of my tracks to be on his desert island on that show, BBC's show, Desert Island Discs.
Right.
I didn't know that Ishiguro knew who I was. I was a huge Ishiguro fan. I'd read 3 of his novels. I was so crazy about his vision of the world. Yes.
Remains of the Day. Yeah, that's
Remains of the Day.
Yeah.
The Unconsoled.
Yeah.
Yeah. Never Let Me Go.
So now you've got a world famous author as a lyricist.
Yes, but just by accident. So he plays me on Desert Island Discs. I write to the BBC and said, I love Kazuo Ishiguro. I didn't know he was a fan of mine. Could you please send him this letter and tell Mr. Ishiguro thank you? He wrote me back personally. Long story short, he lives in North London. We were in North London, and we met up, and we became friends. We did not start writing together. That was in 2000, right?
Oh, okay.
And then he wrote the liner notes to my 2002 album, In Love Again. And Jim and I looked at each other when we read his liner note. We asked him to do it just because he was a friend. But I felt really understood as a singer. I thought that the way, these are up on my website if anybody wants to read them. I just thought that the way he saw me so early on was just remarkable. I felt very understood, but that makes sense because he's an incredibly perceptive human being with such an ability to write dialogue, to hear things in inside his head, create persona for people. Anyway, so he wrote these things. Nothing happened. We just went on our way. We'd have lunch together. We'd have dinner together. And then one day in about 2005, 6, we're having dinner together, the 4 of us, Ish and his wife and Jim and I. And Jim and Ish said, we should write a song for Stacey. It was literally as impetuous as that.
Wow.
We should write a song for Stacey.
Yeah.
Now, I love this idea because going back to your actual question, I was a singer of the Great American Songbook, but to be honest, I felt a little boxed in. And what I mean by boxed in is, there's a real formula, and the formula works. It's fantastic. I will never leave it. But, it's 32 bars of the song, 32 bars or however long of the solo, and then 32 bars back to the singer. And I felt jammed into this kind of limited form. And I was also growing up listening to things that were more long form, like Joni Mitchell, right? Just in terms of the poetry.
Right.
And I think that was missing. As much as I love what I do from a harmonic point of view, that's why I'm a jazz singer as opposed to a folk singer, right? It's the harmony that pulls me in. But the form bugged me, right? And so when they said this thing about, could we write a song for Stacey? That's when I said, it was just such a light bulb moment. I said, I feel this limited form. What if we were able to stay within our realm, but make it more of a story form? Well, I'm talking to Kazuo Ishiguro, who writes a really long story, right? And so we started throwing ideas around, the three of us, in terms of what kind of vocabulary would I use? What would come out of my voice naturally? He said, I see you as such a traveler. I was a kid who was displaced because I ran away from home. Ishiguro's story is different because he was pulled away from home at a much younger age. His family left Japan at 10. But this is what's so interesting about him as a novelist and why it works for me and why displaced people find each other.
Yeah. When
Ishiguro left home, his dad got a job in England, which took them there. He was a scientist and a researcher, and he went from Japan to England for 1 year only. So they kept thinking they were going home, but they never went home. Every year his work got extended. So if you think about what kind of mindset that is for a little boy who leaves home at 10 when they're in those very formative young years, keep wanting to go home, but home keeps moving further and further away, and suddenly you're losing that identity and becoming more and more English, more and more Anglo. I think that's what makes him such a fascinating writer, because he kept looking that way whilst moving that way. And what it did was it just expanded his mind and exploded, both ways, outwards. Right. What an amazing thing for me to have as my lyricist. So they wrote they wrote 2 songs that after that lunch. 2 weeks later, they came up with The Ice Hotel and Breakfast on the Morning Tram.
Wow.
And boom, I was...
Both major hits. And Ice Hotel, when I first heard that, this happens a lot at Jazz FM. I run into Brad Barker's office and I'm like, oh my God, is this Stacey Kent? Because I can tell your voice. But then I'm like, but what is this song? Because it's the first time I had heard a song that I didn't know, because you nail all the bossa nova, you nail all the jazz standards. And I got so excited when I realized that your man was a part composer on that tune. That's when I saw his name on it. And I went, she's doing original music.
I think that it was just, thank you. It was just time. What I like about the pace of how everything's gone was I spent all those years doing Café Bohème, opening sets at Ronnie's, getting these gigs, some abroad. I got asked to do a month in Sweden. All these things kept coming my way. But all the while I was cutting my teeth, learning my trade. I feel very pleased that nobody came along with some magic wand when I was really young, and I wasn't ready. I don't like how I was singing yet in those days. I was figuring it out. Yeah. And it was great that there was space. I'm also very pleased that I didn't grow up in the time of social media, because then I would have been throwing all this onto social media, right? Saying, check out,
creating.
Before I was ready. Now, that's another way to go. Of course, it's great. It's experimental, but I'm glad it didn't happen to me that way.
Right. Well, I always say to artists, young artists, like, make sure you do your homework and find your path, and don't be in a hurry to share everything.
No.
Work at your craft for a longer period of time before you're going to jump out and throw it. Now, that being said, I'm one of those artists who just throw stuff against the wall on a regular basis. But I think there's a lot to be said for taking your time. And you, according to what I see in our library here, 15 albums.
Is it 15?
Yeah.
Do you know, some of those might be compilations, though. I don't know if it's 15.
One of them is the duet record. Record, probably not under your name.
That's right.
But that is a lot of music and several labels. Were there any labels that you feel completely stepped up? Because, for example, this is just me thinking aloud here. It took a long time for an orchestral record from you. And I'm wondering if, it's kind of interesting that the earlier labels didn't kind of go, hey, I know, why don't we go big and do this?
This is where I feel lucky. I do want to retract a little, because you're right. I mean, the social media thing is very cool because your fans are going to be open and they want you to experiment in front of them. They feel kind of connected. You know, if I put something on Patreon, for example, that Jim and I, we did one just the other day. Now, okay, I'm an established artist, but at the same time, I still sing songs that I've never sung before and kind of throw them out there. So somebody wrote me a request. Sorry, I'm going to just go roundabout for a second in answering your question. But somebody sent in a request for My Ship. I've never sung My Ship in my life. But because we're home and we're comfortable, we just kind of, I didn't know all the words yet. We put it on and we put it onto our Patreon. And so it's there on social media. And I think people like the fact that maybe this is a little raw. That's cool. So you're right.
What a great song. Somebody has good taste. That's a great one.
It's a really good song. I'm loving it. But you're right. I think my answer had more to do, it pertains more to the labels. I'm glad the major didn't come to me in those days because I wasn't ready. Yeah. So I did those 6 first albums with Candid, which was an independent, and they were very supportive of me.
And they did Column and a bunch of other things. They've done
exactly
a lot of work at Candid, yeah.
But they didn't have a lot of resource, so we just kind of went along. But a lot of serendipitous, a lot of really good things happened along the way, just kind of by accident. But when Blue Note came along, this is really the answer to your question, because Blue Note came along to me in 2006. I was opening for the Paris Jazz Festival, and they came backstage and they literally said to me, and I will never forget this, they said, "We love what you do and we want you to do it at Blue Note." And that felt so good because I'd done all those years with Candid and all those records that, I was still really just figuring things out. And if they had come along in 2000, I wouldn't have been ready. When they came to me, Nora was their big artist, right?
She actually kept them in business for a few years, didn't she?
Yeah. What was really lovely, lovely, lovely about Blue Note was they were not one of these labels. They were not cynical. I mean, there were labels out there who were saying, we want our new Cassandra Wilson. We want our new Nora Jones. Right. And they were looking to model it on something that had already been successful. Blue Note didn't do that at all. They looked at me, I was completely different from Nora, but rather than saying, could you do a little of this? Could you do a little of that? They said, we love what you do and we want you to do it at Blue Note. Right. That's what made me fall for them immediately, and we knew we were in the right home. So we left Candid, we went to Blue Note. Now, here's another fun thing. So this was in 2006, and now I've signed on the dotted line. And they said, they were excited, right, let's go. And I think that those early years of kind of being pushed around and intimidated really helped me get confident. This was a turning point for me, right? Because I'm sitting at this long executive table with, industry execs. Bruce Lunville, etc. And they said, so let's go, let's make a record. And I said, listen, I can make a record for you this year. But if you give me till next year, I will make you the record you want me to make. And that was a scary thing to say because you're really in, they're in control. They got the purse strings. Yeah. And they said yes.
It's the money for the budget. It's the money for the marketing. They have to believe it for everything to work. Yeah.
Absolutely. And they said yes. So we started writing with Ish. We did 4 songs on that record with him. This was a whole new soundscape, but very much based in our foundation. We didn't go running in some crazy new direction. Right. And yet it was a natural step with those long story form songs that I'm talking about, with a real arc, a whole story, a whole life in a story, like Ice Hotel, Breakfast, So Romantic, I Wish I Could Go Traveling Again. Yeah. And I brought it to Blue Note and they went, thank you. You're right. And that was the first record. Now, my last record for Candid did go gold. It had been successful, The Boy Next Door. Yep. But Breakfast on the Morning Tram is what went platinum, double gold in a bunch of countries, and got a Grammy nomination. So suddenly things, went up a couple of levels. Right. But I believe that the reason it happened is because I was, in answer to your original question there.
Right. You were ready.
I was ready and I was in the right home. I had the right label who they just weren't cynical. They just let me be who I wanted to be. And they said, thanks. And that was just awesome. So we made 4 records for them. And then tiny bit of kind of industry detail here. What happened was the European Competition Commission would not let me stay with Blue Note because the label got sold. And I literally signed on the dotted line to EMI, not to Blue Note, which was unfortunate because my whole team went that way and I was forced to go that way. So my career is now completely out of my control. I ended up going with Warner, not because I signed to Warner, but because that's who ended up with EMI. That's just kind of the industry baloney.
Well, this is interesting because a lot of people that watch these things, and when we're talking, it's people who either really love music or they're actually making music. So
right.
Details about how you end up from label to label. When I see your catalog, I am always curious about this. So I love this.
Yeah.
What about Roberto? What about Roberto? When you started doing Brazilian music, my
exactly. God. That was amazing. So we ended up with Warner. They didn't have a jazz department, by the way. So we only stayed with them for a little while. Once the contract was over, then we went to Sony. Yeah. And that's where Roberto steps in.
Right.
So the reason Roberto steps in is because at the same time as this changing of hands of labels was going on, and I was just being thrown around, Jim and I were invited to play at the 80th birthday celebration of Christ the Redeemer, Cristo Redentor.
This is so weird because that big giant Jesus statue in Rio, right?
Yeah.
I always think it's been there since the dawn of time. It's only 80 years old.
80, well, it's 80 and change now, but yes, right, 80 years old.
And so, by the way, Roberto, 82.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he would have been born almost the same time as the statue.
Yeah. Okay, so this is another one of I'm telling you all my favorite stories, really. This is another one of my favorite stories. These things make my heart pound because they're so real. So Jim and I were invited to go down to Rio to play for this celebration. It was quite an honor because we were the only two non-Brazilians invited to be at this celebration. That was quite something, but we had a reputation because we played all that bossa, right? You know, and
right.
So we got invited, and the producer of the show decided to throw me together with Valley. I didn't know Marcus personally. He didn't know me personally, but he had my Raconte-moi French record. I had a bunch of his records, so we were big fans of each other's music. And we were put together to sing So Nice on the show because it exists in the Portuguese version, Samba de Verão, and So Nice, the English version. So we sang our song together, and we all fell in love. Marcus and Patricia, his wife, Jim and I. I mean, that was just another match made in heaven. Yeah. And that's another story. But anyway, we did our show, and so many of my Brazilian heroes were on that show. Roberto, oh my God, Dori Caymmi. I shared a dressing room with Miúcha, who was João Gilberto's ex-wife, and we fell in love. What, Jimmy? Daniel Jobim. It was just a huge night. Anyway, I'm coming down the stairs after our set, and I'm just so high because we've just played on the beach, Corcovado there with the statue all lit up. There are 1 million people on the beach. It's a big deal.
Yeah.
Marcus is about to get on a plane to go to Japan to go do his tour there. We're hugging goodbye. I come down the stairs, and there's Roberto Menescal at the bottom of the stairs. Now, Roberto is a man whose face I know very well and whose music I know very well, right? And I look at him as if I know him, and I just went, Roberto. And he looks at me and he goes, Stacey? And again, I had no idea that Roberto Menescal knew who I was.
Right.
So he says to me, this feels kind of showy, but I have to tell you the truth. He said to me, Stacey, he loves the standards. He's a Barney Kessel fanatic.
Right.
And he and his wife, Yara, grew up listening to all these jazz standards. So he loves Julie London. He loves them all. And he said, you're my favorite North American singer. And it would be my dream to play with you.
Wow. And this is on an escalator. This is bumping into somebody. Yeah.
This is just on a little stairwell. There's a picture actually up maybe on one of my social media pages that somebody captured that we then grabbed and put up. So there's me and Menesca, because he's not Roberto anymore. He's Roberto Menescal, so you call him Menesca. I have an iPhone in my hand and I'm taking his number. That's actually documented.
Wow.
And so I write him an email so that we're connected. He writes me back. And we become friends. And we invited him to then play on The Changing Lights. So he did 2 guest spots on that.
Yeah.
But he said to me, my dream, he said, I've never played a standards album. I played standards all the time at home on my guitar. All I play is Brazilian music. What if we made a standards album? And I said, yeah.
So it was
that's
his idea. That is an amazing bit of news there. I had no idea that it was his idea to do that record.
It was. And not only was it his idea to make the record, we let him run crazy with the repertoire. All the repertoire except for one song was his idea. So he basically A&R'd it because I was the artist and all the repertoire is his.
Right.
And the only song that I brought to him on that record was If I'm Lucky. And the rest were hit, and he played it so beautifully. I love that song. I grew up on Perry Como singing that.
Yeah.
And he chose the rest. You can tell what a romantic guy is because look at the songs on that record.
Just all beautiful. Maybe a couple bittersweet, but all sweet. Every song on the record. Yeah.
Really romantic. I mean, the man has a huge heart. Huge heart.
And one of the biggest names for everything, for singing, for guitar playing, just in general, when you think bossa nova, it's such a great story that you got to bump into him and he wanted to make that record.
I know. He's one of the fathers of bossa nova. He was producing Elis Regina. You know, he was a producer for a long time while he was also a guitarist. He was on the road with Elis.
Yeah.
And he, you know, played with Nara Leão, did all these amazing things, wrote film music with Chico Buarque for a lot of film. Just unbelievable career. And then in his 80s, he's still so hungry to make music. All of them are, all those guys over there. Danilo Caimi, with whom I guested on one of his tracks, and we're going to go on tour together next year in Portugal. Dori, Joycey, Edu Lobo, Marcus, all of those guys, and Roberto, and that stuff is so organic. And this has to do with kind of what I was saying about early in my career. This wasn't about being ambitious. It was just about making music. And these guys are looking to learn and to grow even today. And they're way older than I am. You know, they could be retired.
Right.
They don't want to. Roberto told me, not just the other day, because we're kind of toying about doing something together, toying with the idea of doing something together in January, just putting down some tracks. And he said, I'm busier than I've ever been in my life.
Wow, beautiful.
I mean, it's lockdown and everybody's home, but they're doing all these Zoom shows and everything. He's writing all these arrangements for people. But at the base of it all, they just want to keep growing. And that is so inspiring and so beautiful.
Absolutely amazing. Hey, let's go to the present for a moment. We just started playing Three Little Birds. It's a beautiful, simple, heartfelt version of that song. And it also is something we all need right now. What inspired you to record that?
It's funny because after we made the orchestral record, I Know I Dream, which came after the Manesca album, we had done something so big, right? We're 60 people and we were kind of toying with the idea of what we were going to do next. We actually have something in our back pocket to do next, but we delayed the release because of the pandemic and we're not on tour.
Yeah.
So it's supposed to be out in October 2020. And we deferred it to September 2021. Anyway, in the meantime, here's what happened with Three Little Birds. I'm really glad you asked this because, again, this was so organic. What happened was a bunch of years ago, I was asked to play a song for an ad campaign for mattresses in England. I don't know why I'm going like this, but I talk with my hands. So it's really chill. It's late night music. It's supposed to soothe people and go to sleep. So they invited me into the studio to put down some demos of different songs. And one of the songs that they came up with was Three Little Birds. Now, I was crazy about Three Little Birds because I grew up on Bob Marley. Mm-hmm. And in the end, they had this sample idea and we kicked it around, but they said, no, we don't want to do that. They ended up going with a song I had already recorded for their commercial, which was Hushabye Mountain. Yeah. And everybody forgot it. We all walked away. Hushabye went on TV and that was it. But I never forgot it because Three Little Birds means so much to me. And I said this to somebody the other day, James, and I'm going to say it to you too. Right now, during the pandemic, and there's so much fear out there, and there's so much anxiety, and the world's gone upside down. I mean, you guys are luckier in Canada than we are over here, but the world's a little crazy right now. And I think people turn to people like us, not me, you, all of us who make music and live in music, to just take a deep breath and sigh and feel like the optimists that we are, because human beings, the human condition is just to look for hope, right?
Right.
And this is what I said to somebody the other day. I said, I feel like, you know, Sigourney Weaver in that really scary moment in Alien where she's on the ship and she knows the monster's there and she sings "You Are My Lucky Star" to herself because she's terrified, right? Yeah. Human beings turn to lullabies to feel better. And this is 10 years after that commercial and that recording session. And I said to Jim, we're locked down. We want to put out some singles in the meantime, because people are writing to me on social media and saying, you know, can you sing us some lullabies? I mean, I'm literally getting these kind of requests. Yeah. And I said, let's go back to that idea and let's put it out, because the world needs this right now, not our next record. They need this. Right. And it was so simple. We did it in just such a simple form. There's so few instruments on it. And it's just me singing this lullaby. And that was the idea. You know, it was just to throw something out there that just felt like you could. We have another one.
Yeah, sorry? I would say, are you allowed to tell me what's coming out next?
I'll tell you. We're working on it right now. I mean, this minute. Jim is behind me. He's behind this phone conversation in his headphones, working on the edit right now. Hilarious. So in Jan, I'm not really supposed to tell, but you're the only person I'm going to tell this to, because, you know, so what?
Nobody watches anyway.
Right. It's just us, right? So another song from my childhood, or not childhood, but in the early days, is Bill Withers' "Lovely Day."
Oh, I love the lyric to that song.
I love it.
I love how he holds that last note for longer than anyone should ever hold a note. And I just love Bill Withers. There's a guy, his only reputation is he is a down-to-earth human being with no airs about him.
I know. It's so earthy. It's so real. And I love singing it. I'm loving it. Sounds jaded.
I like to think of myself as seasoned, not jaded. But when I think of Bill Withers, that song in particular, but him in general, I always think it's happy, it's positive without being ironic. And nowadays, when people write things that are happy, there's almost a tongue-in-cheek that I don't get. I don't want sarcasm or irony. Sometimes you just want to hear a nice song. And that's what he seemed to do, right? Bill Withers just wrote these beautiful, beautiful songs.
But that's what's so great about you, Jaymz. I mean, we see that together. It's just real. It's just pure. You know, it's like being a kid. And the kid is in everybody. Whether or not they believe it, everybody reverts to that. And the reason you know they do is because they might not be running with abandon through the park, you know, with that crazy giggle that only children have. And yet when they hear it, everybody's so infected by it. It's just infectious. Yeah. You know, don't you love when you see a kid just running kind of a little faster than they can handle? Do you know what I mean? And there's just that purity and that exhilaration. And it's something that everybody relates to. And you need that in music too. You need that purity. I mean, we need everything in music. We need the full gambit. That's why I don't need to be anything more than I am. You don't need to be anything more than you are.
Right. You know, there's a world out there that needs all of this.
All of it. And, you know, one of my favorite things is when people will write us on social media and they'll say, sometimes people will tell us what they're up to because, you know, they just want to share. And they'll say, you know, I saw Marilyn Manson on you and on Tuesday and I saw you on Saturday, you know, this kind of thing after the show. It's, you know, I'm listening to my Steven Tyler records today and I listened to you yesterday. I love that people just want to mix and match, and not everybody. I mean, some people just listen to one kind of music and that's another way to go. Yeah. In the same way that we could say that people take a holiday, let's say, and maybe some people go to the same place every year. Right? And they'll never move. And other people want to travel the whole world. And sometimes there are economic restrictions, of course, but sometimes it has nothing to do with that. It's just that some people want to get out there and other people want to see that same cabin with the red painted door every single year. We're all a little bit different in that.
Yeah, exactly.
But there's so much music out there. And what I love is that I'm influenced by so much music that has nothing to do with the kind of music that I make, you know, that comes out of my mouth, because I sing in a particular way. I sing the way I speak. It's kind of, you know, it's kind of girly, you know. I have a high timbre.
Yes, it's youthful, it's hopeful, and it's something we need right now. So thank you so much for your music.
Thank you.
And I wish you a happy new year. And I can't wait for your next song. Whenever that comes, we'll be all over it on Jazz FM, that's for sure.
That is so great, James, because we actually have all these things planned, and I will keep sending them to you. We have a release in Jan. We have 2 in Feb. They're just singles and EPs. We just released the Christmas EP, and that's what this year is about for us for lockdown. Everybody's going to find their way to handle lockdown, and ours is just to keeps us connected, because as much as I love living out here,
right, you still connect with people.
We're cut off. So thank goodness for social media. Thank goodness for you for calling out and saying, let's meet.
And a cheers to you.
Cheers to you. Thank you so much.
All right. We'll talk to you soon.
Great to talk to you.
For your time, and love to Jim.
I'll give him your love right now, and back from him to you.
All right.
Bye, everybody.
Bye. Thanks so much.